Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Emily Calkins, and I'm a librarian with the King County Library System. We're so glad you're here for this conversation tonight about such a fun age. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. You can participate in tonight's event in a couple of ways. You can say hello over in the chat. If you have a question for Kiley, please submit it via the Ask a Question feature that's down at the bottom of the page. You can also vote for other people's questions there, so if you see an interesting one, please do that. If you run into problems with your stream quality, there's a Get Audio Video Help down in the left corner of the screen underneath where it says Live. So click there for help with your audio video. We are grateful to the KCLS Foundation for their support of tonight's event and our ongoing author series. If you'd like to help support these events, you can do that by clicking the donate button below. And if you'd like to purchase a copy of Such a Fun Age, the link down at the bottom will take you to our partner bookstore, Third Place Books. You can also borrow Such a Fun Age from the library system, and I will put that link in the chat now. So there, oops, that's not it, sorry. There we go. If you want to borrow it from the library system, that second link is the link to the book. And now I'm delighted to introduce tonight's moderator and our speaker. Our moderator, Helena Stephens, is the Initiatives and Equity Manager for the City of Bellevue. She has 40 years of experience in public service with a focus on equity, youth development, and community engagement. She's a graduate of Seattle University. She's married to a civil rights attorney. She's a mother of 5 and the proud grandmother of 4. Kiley Reid is the author of Such a Fun Age. It was a New York Times bestseller and a pick for the Well-Read Black Girl Book Club, the Reese Witherspoon Book Club, and the Buzzfeed Book Club. It was longlisted for the 2020 Booker Prize and was a finalist for the NAACP Image Award. It was also on our Best Books of the Year list at the King County Library System. Reid earned her MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop, and her short stories have appeared in publications like Plowshares, Playboy, The New South, and more. Her work has also appeared in the New York Times and in Time magazine. I was lucky enough to get an advance copy of Such a Fun Age that I read about 1.5 years ago now in the summer of 2019. And I've never finished a book and been so sure that it was going to be a huge book. It's so engaging, so compelling, and so full of interesting conversation starters. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from Kiley tonight. And thanks to both of you for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. So welcome, everyone. It's really great to see all the buzz that is happening in the chat tonight. And we're so pleased, and welcome to the Northwest, Kiley. We're thrilled to have you. I am seeing all kinds of people that are so excited, can't wait to pop their questions in and hear from you about the book. And congratulations on all the accolades that are happening. We're so pleased, very happy for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So let's just jump in. I just want to say to everyone who's listening, Kiley and I had a chance to talk a little bit earlier, and we were talking about this is a great opportunity for people to cuddle up with their blankets, favorite glass of wine, or favorite beverage, and have a good conversation for an hour or so. Kiley, I really enjoyed the book. But I have lots of questions, and I'm sure other people do too. Let me just, first of all, start at the very beginning. Let's talk about the title for a minute, Such a Fun Age. So when I was reading the book, we're talking about women who are in their 20s, women that are in their 30s, but a lot of it hinges on their coming of age, what happened to them in high school, what happened to them in college. And so I was trying to figure out exactly which fun age were you talking about? And so maybe you could start off with that.
That's a good question. And I see some people talking about an echo, and I just want to make sure both of us, I'm checking right now to make sure I don't have any other windows open to make sure I am not causing that. You don't have any other windows open, do you? Before we
I am closing everything that might cause a problem. So I'm hoping that there's no other issues. I hope the echoes will go anyway. Let us know, folks, if the echoes don't.
Yeah. But yes, Such a Fun Age is the title, and it's definitely referring to a lot of different ages. So for Emira specifically, she's 25 years old, and she's at this place where she's a few years out of school, and she feels like she is late for everything and also doesn't know what that thing is as well. And so I think that there is this period for many people in their 20s, and not just women, where you get to this age where your friends, their upward mobility seems really extreme, and you feel like, wait, what's going on here? And I was really interested in the fact that often universities and colleges have this way of making it seem like everyone is the same, because everyone is in the same dorm or same apartment, you're eating at the same place, you're going to the same bars, and then you get out of school and you start seeing your friends, jump up with salaries. And I don't know about you, but when I was in my 20s, I was really excited for my friends to start getting married because I love weddings and love dancing, and I couldn't wait to go. And then when I was asked to be a bridesmaid, I remember thinking, wait, how much is this dress? And then like, what? How are we doing this? And then we're going to this place, and then we're going to this place, and like everyone's just paying for this. And I was a nanny at the time, and I didn't really understand how we would be paying for that. So on top of all of that, Emira is coming to the end of her health insurance. As in this country, your health insurance is based off of where you work, and her parents' health insurance is running out. And so I love to put like a clock on the story that time is running out for someone. I think that it helps everyone's read. And so I wanted to comment on Emira's age. I wanted to comment on Alix's age. She feels like, oh, I've peaked at 33. This is it. But more than anything, the term "such a fun age" stands out to me as something that people often say between strangers. When I was a nanny, that was something people said at the park all the time. Nannies or fathers or mothers would say, oh, how old is she? Oh, 16 months. Yeah, that's such a fun age. It just really rolls off the tongue, kind of like you're asking about the weather or something. And so I liked to, put you in the toddler, place of mind immediately. But of course, this is also talking about the age that we're in. It's based in 2015, when the Black Lives Matter movement was starting to make its moves in response to police brutality. And so, yes, the title is, a little bit glib, but also referring to a lot of different ages. And I wish I knew what the funnest one was. I'm still figuring that out.
Well, thank you, because I use that term from time to time, and now I know how to use it appropriately.
There you go.
So, thank you. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was your audience. You were talking about the fact that Emira is 25 years old and Alix is in her 30s. And yet I saw this book really crossing all types of ages for women. And so who did you plan on it targeting? And then have you had any surprises now that your readership has grown?
That's a great question. I really love smart, accessible fiction that can really run the gamut of ages and can really meet people with where they are. And I like it when characters are so familiar that they can meet anyone, no matter what age they are. That being said, I definitely assumed that, many young women would hear of another young woman and be attracted to that and feel like they could relate to her. With this book in particular, some people ask me, like, is this for Black people? Is this for white people? More than anything, if I was going to relate to someone, it was domestic caregivers in this book. I wanted it to feel so real. And I wanted domestic caregivers to say, yes, that is what that is like. And that's what that smells like. That's what that feels like. That's what that sounds like. That was really important to me. But coming at the end of a publication year, I have seen a few surprises. I got an email from a woman who said, my name is Briar, I'm 79, and I've never seen my name in a book before. And I just wanted to say thank you for that experience, which was really great. I got an email from someone who said, I'm a 60-year-old white man in London, and I loved this, and I love making fun of Alix's name, and so that was fun. I've gotten some college students who feel that they also don't really know what they want to do and are getting pressure to move. And so I'm glad that that's resonated with them as well. I would like to think that my book can be read by all ages, but of course I was thinking it's probably for a lot of women in their 20s to 30s places, but most of the book clubs I've done are women who are 60 and up. So I hope it stays that way.
Well, that's great. I'm really glad that you brought up the issue around domestic help and really being in the position of nannies, professional nannies. Um, your book has caused quite a stir around the country from a lot of different people, especially just recently had a chat with my daughter who's in Atlanta about your book and the stir that it's causing down there. Uh, and so, did you get any surprise, any pushback about the profession that you focused on in the book?
Yes, from very interesting perspectives. And like first, I think I want to say, I believe that as an artist, I don't get to control how people engage with my art. And I also think that people are bringing so much of who they are, of the fight that they just had, the relationship they just had to your book in a way that like you really just can't control where that is at. I love when people have strong reactions to things. So most strong reactions that I get, I'm very, very happy for. I got a lot of strong reactions, especially some of the great ones were from Black women who would say, I've never heard characters like this talk the way that me and my friends talk in a book that's literary fiction. And of course, that's really wonderful to hear. I have to be honest and say there were some white women who said to me, I feel like you were too hard on the white woman in this book and you were just way too hard on her. And I think that that's a really interesting perspective because the white woman in my book is never going to make less money than she does right now. She lives in a lovely home. She has healthcare. She has a family. And sometimes she gets embarrassed, but she has so many resources under her. And the young Black woman in this book has a not great apartment. She doesn't have healthcare. Even when she, finds her feet a bit, it's not a high paying job. And she has to endure things like someone saying the N-word to her. And I think it's really interesting to react by saying, I want to protect this white woman who has everything that Emira should have. And so any comment like that, I really do welcome it. I love a strong reaction to a book, but there are certain comments that you receive that you say, ooh, I'm glad I did what I did. I'll do it again. Yeah.
Well, actually, I have a whole bunch of questions about the white woman, Black woman relationship going on in the book, but we're kind of early on, so we'll kind of get a little deep. Yeah, we'll pull that back a little bit. But I did want to talk about the fact that the book is a series of complicated relationships. There's nothing simple about the relationships that are there, even between Emira and Bry.
Briar, whatever you want. Yes.
Yeah. And they have a very sweet and loving relationship that's very intelligent. And I love the interaction. It was part of my favorite part of reading the book is when the two of them would interact and made my heart pound. And so, but let's talk about all the other complicated relationships first. So you've got Alix and her girlfriends. That's another whole series unto itself. You can write another whole series on that because I have lots to say about Tamara. And then you have Emira and her girlfriends and the interactions and her trying to keep up with them and trying to make the right decisions. And they're so protective of her,
right.
Which was really endearing. And then you have, well, of course, you have Alix and Emira, right? And so that goes down a road. So let's take some of this apart. Let's pull some of this apart.
Sure. Something that really, I can say I've benefited from a group text of women who are very supportive friends. And I've definitely benefited from girlfriends who really are there for you and very loyal. I remember when I was applying to graduate school the first time, because I applied twice because I did not get anywhere my first time. And I remember the first time my girlfriend Jokey tutored me in math for the GRE. My girlfriend Lauren helped me with my resume, and my girlfriend Corinne helped write a resume. And after all of the support, I didn't even get in, and they didn't blink. They just kept supporting me until I got in. And so I have definitely benefited from really wonderful friendships. But I also think that friendships and groups are very interesting in that they're often driven by class solidarity. And I think that Alix's group is pretty established with where they are in terms of income and class and what they can do for each other. But there are, signifiers of her group that can only happen in a group like that. So Alix meets Jody when she's at Briar's, doctor's appointment. That's a doctor that Emira could probably never go to or get a referral to or afford. And so Alix is already getting social capital from that. And then Tamara hooks her up with a job, and they have this social network that helps them all move up. And I think that a lot of them often think like, oh, we're doing feminism by taking all of us and moving us up, even though we're not helping anybody who actually needs it. But then you have Emira and her girlfriends, and she's struggling to feel like she can be with them or not be with them. And I feel like her group of girlfriends more shows how class solidarity can often tear friends apart. When you want to do something and your friend can't afford to do it, I think that can end a friendship. But more than anything, it was so important for me to show why these girls are friends, that they're really close and they get along and they make each other laugh. And much like a lot of my girlfriends, they're wonderful, but give terrible advice a lot of the time. It happens. Okay.
But we love them anyway. We do.
Yes.
And so I was really glad that you showed the balance between Alix and her girlfriends and Emira and her girlfriends. And when there was that crossover briefly between not only at the Thanksgiving dinner, but when Tamara wanted to coach, advise, lead Emira, I was hot. And so I just have to say I was hot. I had so many reactions going on. One of the times I really wanted to talk to your characters right there. Let me jump in and say something. So could you talk a little bit more about how and why you decided to develop that conversation between the two sisters that way?
Absolutely. So I'm sure, as you can see, in many ways, this is a book where I took many stereotypes and then I bent and twisted them and often mirrored them. And so in the groups of friends, there is the momish kind of character, there's the tell it like it is character, and then I wanted to do a play on what we often see as the sassy Black friend and the magical Negro character who white people go to get all of this wisdom from. And I wanted to show how twisted that is often, especially as soon as you pull in Black bourgeoisie elite people. And so Tamara is a woman with very high respectability politics. She's very polished, and she feels like, I think this shows up in minority cultures a lot, that people who have made it really big think not only is Emira holding herself back, but she's holding all of us back. She sees Emira as representing Black people in general, and she's really not okay with her anti-careerism. And so I was thrilled to put Tamara in the same room with Emira for a number of reasons. First of all, I feel that the cringiest thing is when Black elite people try and code switch and be down to relate to anybody else. It's the worst. It's just like, just be who you are, just be regular. So already that was really fun to include. But I also wanted to show how, for some people, they think, oh, I have this one Black friend and I've asked her and she's spoken on it, and so it must be right. But I think that we all know that skinfolk was not always kinfolk and see things in a very different way. So you were not the only one to get mad in that scene. My professor, Paul Harding, when I wrote that scene in graduate school, was also very, very upset. But I have to say, my favorite characters are ones that sometimes you want to hug them, but sometimes you want to shake them at the same time. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the sign of an excellent book, right? Okay. When you are totally engaged and you are the characters right there in your face and you're interacting with them. So thank you. Thank you for bringing your characters to life so real. I want to ask one more question about relationships, and then we're going to take some of the questions from the audience that have been popping up. There's a character in the book. She doesn't get a lot of play, but she has a significant role, and that's Lainey.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised, and I think pleasantly so, how Emira really protected Lainey in a lot of ways. And could you just talk a little bit more about that and
Yes.
her development? Yeah.
First of all, gladly, because I've been doing interviews all week and no one has asked me about Lainey, and I care about her too, so I'm very glad you asked. Lainey, to me, so I think it's obvious, very clear that something that I really care about in my writing is getting these class indicators very, very specific and right on. And so something that I think happens often, especially with the liberal elite, is that there's a cultural fit that they deem like, this is okay, that's not okay, that's over there, that's trashy or loud, and we're over here and we're minimalist and polished and it's different. And so while Lainey is also, a member of this upper class society, her tastes aren't as modern. She's a bit old fashioned. She has, the news anchor kind of pageanty makeup because that's the culture of being a news anchor. She's, a bit homey. She's kind of silly. She's just not as hip in New York as Alix is. She's kind of proudly suburban. And so in that birthday party scene, she's nice to Emira. She tucks in her tag at the back of her shirt, which is always kind of a nice thing. Someone does that. She offers to help her out. And Emira thinks that this is a nice person. This is fine. And I think that Alix thinks, well, wait, I'm like way cooler than this woman. She's like, well, Emira, you're cool. Like, I'm cool too. Like, this woman, she's not cool. Like, what's going on? And I did want to highlight that, for many Black women, it's about the job. It's about who's going to make this job the easiest. When you're a low income person, so many people say to me, how can Alix be a better ally? And I have to reject the premise of that question, because in this scenario, Emira's not going around saying like, hi, are you a good ally? She's saying how much, when, let me see the kid. Okay, she's fine. Like, that's just not what you can afford to think about in that moment. And so the best thing that Alix can do is be a good employer for her. And so I think that Emira immediately recognizes that Lainey would probably be a good employer. She might make bad jokes, but that's okay. And she's kind of intense about her kid, but she might be a good employer. But Alix definitely snubs her nose at someone who isn't as modern and New Yorkish and polished as Lainey is. So I love characters like that kind of pop in and pop out. So I'm really glad that you asked.
The characters were amazing. And I like the characters that give quite a bit to the story, but they're not always in front and center. So thank you very much for her. So we had a question about actually the names of your character. One of the folks that says, I know that you said that the names of the characters all have significance. Can you tell us what they mean?
Sure. So Emira, it's so funny. Some characters will just like come into your head and be like, here I am, that's it. And it's no work. It's amazing. And Emira was that for me. Emira was always Emira from the very beginning. I love name meanings. And I was little, I used to carry around a name, like a baby name book, just so I could read it. I think names carry sometimes pride, sometimes colonization, sometimes hurt, sometimes change. And so I think names are really, really powerful. For Emira, I also really wanted her to have an ambiguously ethnic name that Alix was not really sure what she was getting when she came to the door, because I think that those moments are really rich and true when you say, that happened to me all the time whenever I would have interviews anywhere before the internet. I would show up and they would say, sorry, you're okay, no, sorry, come on in. And I wanted that moment for sure for Emira. So that's where her name came from. And it actually means princess in Arabic. And I liked the idea of this woman who's actually not a damsel in distress. She's fine, but everyone around her is panicking that she doesn't want more for her life. So I liked the inverse of that. I believe Alix means worker, but I also, more than I cared about the meaning of her name, I cared about the switch that she did, which is switching from the American Alix to the French Alix, which is trying to ditch the old her and take on this new elite Alix and saying, actually, it's the French pronunciation. And then with Briar, her name really presented itself easily to me as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the very old, slightly racist cartoon Tar Baby and Briar Rabbit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I really liked the inclusion of that and just her being this little rabbit in this world. And it's an analogy for people getting stickier and stickier as they keep messing things up. And I really liked the idea of Kelly having a traditional female's name that's also kind of like a gentrified name. You hear Kelly and you know this person. This person probably has a little bit of money. Yeah.
Yeah. It always struck me as Southern genteel from the plantation days a little bit when a male was named Kelly. But
right.
Yeah,
I see that.
Thank you.
Of course.
Speaking of Briar, there was a question that was asked. I don't know if I totally agree with it, but I'm curious now that I've read it. And the question is, it seems that Briar may be autistic. Was that your intention?
That is an interesting question. This is not me copping out, but when you write characters, they're like your babies, all of them, even the ones that make really poor decisions. But I really do think that as a writer, I almost have a responsibility to my characters, and whatever they reveal in the novel is what they're comfortable revealing. Whatever they are when you see them and whatever you read them, that is what they are. I'm not here to, unfortunately, I'm not going to out my character's sexuality. I don't talk about all of my character's sexuality. I don't talk about, all of their capacities in any way. And so, of course, everyone has different reads of things, and whatever read you have, you should honor that. But I'm gonna protect Briar a little bit on that one and say that's not for me to say. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I want to get back to, there was a question that popped up about, and I think this kind of goes a little bit to the fact that Alix, in listening to your answer, went to the French Alix. And because high school was full of turmoil. So one of the questions that has been asked is, could you talk a little bit about the fact of the high school party and the invitation that got all, for lack of a better word, catawonka, as that story plays out? And then I have a follow-up question after that around that whole piece. So I'll let you speak to that first.
Okay, yes. So thinking of that scene actually kind of warms my heart, because originally I just had Alix and Kelly talking about their memory of that scene. And then when I workshopped the novel, when I was in Iowa, Paul was like, if you keep talking about a scene, you have to write it. Like, that's the one that you should be writing. You have to go there. And so my girlfriend Mel, who's a wonderful writer and friend, helped me write those backstory scenes of what happened in high school. So kind of like the first scene, you have this instance where the line is blurred of what's right and what's wrong. Basically, the coolest kid in school goes over and breaks into Alix's compound of her huge house and brings his friends, and they're having a party in her house, and she's there with her boyfriend Kelly, and he kind of sees this as like a social climbing opportunity. He says, oh, these are really cool kids, like you should let them stay. She doesn't like that. Her housekeeper says, this is crazy, we should call the cops. The cops are called, and this young Black man is arrested and loses his scholarship. And so Alix becomes a bit of a pariah because her house has plantation vibes to it. This was a young, very popular Black student, and she didn't, have a great reputation before that. She was kind of a nobody, and then she was somebody nobody liked. And so I wanted to play with how Kelly and Alix remember that moment, and how the memory of it keeps kind of changing for both of them. Alix keeps dignifying herself and saying that, what was I supposed to do? I had to protect myself. I had to protect my sitter, even though no one was not safe, but I can see why they would call the police. But Kelly turns it into this thing where he says, oh, well, it was clear that it was a racist move, that was going to happen, but that was not on his mind. when it happened. He was thinking of himself. And I think that that's how memories operate sometimes. The more that you tell them, you shape them to how you want to seem in that moment rather than how the thing actually happened. And so I wanted this to be a really life-changing moment for Alix, that she literally changes her name to forget all about it. And Alix, I think a lot of people like to write her off a little bit and say like, oh, she's just a rich person. But her history is really complicated. She was very much middle class until her parents won the lottery and went kind of nuts. And I think that all of that money shapes how she lives her life now and how she wants to be seen.
Well, that when we get toward the end and you begin to talk about Alix cleaning out the locker, and I don't want to get into too much because if you haven't read the book, I don't want to give away key things. But that really blew me away as to giving a really great insight as to Alix, the type of person Alix is and how she deals with her problems. And so one of the questions that the audience has sent in is, does Alix have any redeeming qualities in your view? Or is she just a terrible, shallow person all around?
Okay. I love the spirit of that question. I'm going to give a hot take, because Alix has a lot of redeeming qualities. So for a few reasons, I think that these characters have to be real. Alix is a good friend to her girlfriends. She can be a very good mom in certain circumstances, but on a very basic level, hear me out, I have babysat for a lot of women. Alix does something that not all women do, in that she doesn't mess with Emira's money. She's responsible, she pays her on time, and she respects her workspace. I cannot tell you how many women I babysat for who would try to pay me $20 less, who would want to keep me for longer, who didn't really respect me, or who, just like, would text me, oh, so sorry, like we actually don't need you, when I'm already there. Alix doesn't mess with her time. So on a very basic level, she's not that bad. She's very creepy. She shouldn't read Emira's text messages, but on a basic level, for half the book, she's not a terrible employer. But I also think that Alix is so lonely, and she moves to Philadelphia, and her husband is kind of like, have fun doing childcare. That's not really for me to worry about. And so I feel like I make Alix a little bit more empathetic by hopefully highlighting the fact that she lives in a country where childcare is not subsidized, and she just has to figure it out. And I love characters who suddenly find themselves in a position of power and just don't know how to handle it. And so unfortunately, in this case, Alix is one of many, many upper-class white women who their life could not operate unless they were exploiting the work of women of color. She's one of many, many people. And so even if her and Emira were best buds, that exploitation is still there. And so I think that's important.
Well, I want to come back to that point. I don't want to lose that, because I do want to talk a little bit about the historical implications of the fact that Black women have raised white women's children for centuries. But I want to just touch on Alix a little bit. Was it your intent? Because my view about Alix was not so much that she was a good or bad person, but sometimes there was some mental illness gaps that happened with how she approached some of her crises in life. When she got all wrapped up in what Kelly and Emira was doing and left, I think it was Catherine, the baby, and then when you talked about describe what happened in the locker and the difference between fantasy and reality. Right. So did you intend to go that way, or that was just something that came out?
No, I'm trying to remember. It was a long 3 years. I knew, when I'm writing, I do plot things out, and I kind of knew the arc of the story, and I knew that I wanted to start with one filming and end with another filming. So those were things I knew. I'm not sure if I knew Alix's entire trajectory, but I won't spoil too much. What were you saying something that I had a thought on? What was it? Yes. Alix, I personally love watching characters kind of hit their breaking point and behave really, really badly. And so I wanted to give her the freedom to really just, you see her when she's at her very, very worst. She's had enough and she just really, really cracks. It's interesting though, and I have to use this year of publication as a guide as well. There are people like Alix who have really good intentions, but do sneaky things. And then I will never forget, when the book was first coming out, I think it was maybe Barnes and Noble put out a tweet about my book coming out. And I was so excited. And the very first comment was, "I don't read Negro novels." And I thought, my goodness. I think racism works on a number of levels. And I have to remember that there's racism in that comment that is so overt and hurtful. And there's also racism in Alix telling lies to make her babysitter think that she's cooler than she is. And so, me painting her as a flat out bad person, I think takes energy away from so many of the systems that we live with that make these things happen. I wonder if this would have happened if Emira had healthcare, or if she, had better resources. And maybe she would be like, you're crazy. Like, I don't have to deal with you. That would be a completely different story. And so I hope to not sound too diplomatic about it, but Alix is still close to my heart. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because in the book, we're talking about modern day Black and white issues. Obviously, what happens in the grocery store is not uncommon, but you've also reached back to, I think, a sensitive point for a lot of Black women historically, because we have been in the role of taking care of white women's children for centuries. And did that play out in your thinking at all in writing this story? Did you talk with people about that? Was your intent to kind of do an underlying kind of not story, but parallel thinking around that?
That's a great question. As far as the history goes, when you're telling a story like this, I think it behooves the novel to dive into how it happened then and how it happens now. And it doesn't do the story justice if you are not looking at where we've come from in that history. And it's been interesting because in doing that research, when people say this book is so timely, I can't help but think, I don't think that this novel is more timely now than it was in the 1950s, when most Black women were domestic care workers. I think what's happening now is we have cell phones and we capture things differently, and then your relationship to race becomes different. But the answer is yes, and research is a huge part of my process. I feel so inspired by looking at people who've done these things. A novel that was, or not, a nonfiction book that was very, very inspirational to me was a book called Uneasy Street: Anxieties of Affluence by sociologist Rachel Sherman. And I read it probably in the middle of writing, and it really kicked things into gear for me. There were many chapters on parenting, and she's a sociologist who interviewed about 50 families in New York City about their extreme wealth. And a lot of it was their relationship to the people that served them. And so many of them feel that if I can get this person who serves me to like me, then I will deserve the fact that they're here in my life. And that was repeated over and over again. And of course, the people on the other end of that are usually people of color or people who are undocumented, people who do not have the security as their counterparts. And so I was completely inspired in how a huge history of Black women raising white children still shows up. It doesn't matter how much you pay them. It doesn't matter how close you are. It still very much shows up. And I'm sure that you feel the same way in some ways. There are ways that it shows up in my life that I almost miss it. I remember I got a DM a few days ago from a woman I used to work with who said, I missed our times working together. This Black Lives Matter thing is crazy. And I just want to thank you so much for teaching me so much when we worked together and you were a receptionist. You taught me so much. I didn't teach her anything. White people like to think that Black people are educating them all the time. And it's that magical Negro character all over again. And even just with this book, some people will say, I'm doing the work. Here we go. I'm going to read this book and I'm going to be a better person for it. Listen, I wish novels could make you a better person right away, but also of course, I think that novels can teach you things, but I just don't think romanticizing I'm a better person now because I read a story about Black people is a good thing at all. So yes, I obviously have tons to say on that, and I'm very obsessed with how history shows up in the modern day. That being said, it's all about the nuances and the story first.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I do think that is part of a relationship that isn't discussed very often. And yet, as a Black woman, I can tell you that when I looked at the relationship between Emira and Briar, I thought, oh, not only what a sweet relationship, but when Emira moves on, it's going to break her heart. And because there's love established there, that relationship is established there, and we rarely talk about it.
I think that's really, really important. And from the very beginning, I wanted this to not be a typical rom-com, even though I love rom-coms. I just wanted it to be, is this Black woman going to end up with this white child that she's really, really bonded with? And there were so many children that I just felt like we are a unit. Like, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I got this. And we go to a park. I'm like, hey, we're going to have a good time. You're not going to have a breakdown. It's going to be awesome. And they're with me. And it's really wonderful. But with transactional relationships, they cannot happen unless there's an exchange of money. It's not appropriate. And so in thinking about that, I wanted it to be heartbreaking in the ways that it is, because when you are caring for a child, it's not like when I was a receptionist answering the phone. The more I care for that child, the better I do. You can't help but feel so close to a child. And I think that for Black women, that gets really interesting. There was one little girl that I was babysitting for a long time, and we would play this game together before bed sometimes, where we would like pillow fight a little bit. It was very safe. And we would play, and she would come and hit me, and I would say to her, come on, girl, what you got? Let's go. What you got? And she would hit me, and then I would fall over. She loved it. So a few weeks later, she's white and all of her friends are white. We're at a play date, and I hear her in the other room with her girlfriends. She's 4. And I hear her saying to her girlfriends, come on, what you got? Come on, show me what you got. I panicked. I thought her parents are going to hear her. They're going to not like that, because that does not sound like her. And who else would she get it from? And I think that that's really heartbreaking, because that's me being my best. Your child is safe. We're having fun. That's who I am. And I think that for a lot of Black women, especially in emotional labor types of jobs, they have this moment where they go, ooh, I got too comfortable. I need to pull back. And comfort is what makes you good at your job. And it's just one of the many ways I think Black women often struggle to be good at their job, but not too good, but work twice as hard. It's all confusing. Yeah.
So all I can say to that is ding, 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 ding. You're hitting it right on the nail for that. Thank you very much. I want to shift gears a little bit, because there's a character that I see in the chat, their questions, my questions too, and I don't want to not talk about this person, and that's Kelly. Kelly is
Kelly's
kind of, yeah, he's kind of misaligned a couple of times. Can you talk a little bit more about Kelly? Because there's a whole lot to him. Yeah. Thanks.
Kelly's a lot to unpack. So Kelly is the young man that ends up filming Emira, and they end up dating. He's a young white man. He's 32. He works at a tech firm. And Emira, when she first meets him, she thinks, okay, maybe like just tonight, like we'll see a little bit what's going on with this. And it was really important for me to have the reader kind of dating Kelly along with Emira, and just understand that in the beginning, she's like, I'm not trying to get married. We'll see where this goes. But then he kind of delights her. And so it was so important for me to show where Kelly sometimes really nails it. They have a great chemistry together. He makes her laugh. He really likes her. She likes him too. And I think that he also kind of validates her life in a way that her friends aren't doing at that moment. And so she really appreciates that. At the same time, Kelly messes up. He really messes up sometimes, and he doesn't kind of zoom out and understand where he is. It was really important to me to highlight that for many Black people, when someone does something like make a crude joke or say the N-word or say something they shouldn't say, so much of the Black experience is going, okay, do I say something or do I let it go? I'm not sure. And sometimes it's, oh man, like I really want a promotion, so I'm not going to say anything. Or, you know what, I kind of want to have a good night, I'm just not going to say anything. And I think that that's just as Black as saying, no, that's not okay. Like, let me educate you, because all those feelings are so genuine. And so I wanted Emira to go through the gamut with him and just understand slowly if he's someone that she wants in her life. And so, you know, Kelly, he can be really problematic. He can be really charming. But I think the important thing here is that someone who has so much love and affection for you can also be getting things out of the relationship that he shouldn't be. He can also be using you. He can also, you know, not understand that he's using you. And I honestly think that that's kind of like more scary than overt racism sometimes. It's hard to know who you should connect with. Okay, I'm also going to tell you something right now that I'm so embarrassed about. My computer's going to lose charge, and I have to run and get my charger so fast. What's happening? I'm going to run. It's going to be fine. Give me 2 seconds.
So you go run. And what I will say to folks, thank you for putting your questions in the chat and your comments. They are cracking me up. I hope everybody is having a chance to see the ongoing conversation that's going on in the chat, and I hope you join in. The other thing is that we have still some wonderful questions, and Kiley's back. That's how quick that is.
Sorry.
That was perfect timing. Perfect timing. So one of the things about Kelly is that there was 2 times that I actually thought he got kind of victimized. Well, you know, I don't want to give away the book. I want people to read the book.
One in the beginning.
I thought, you know, he was accused twice of doing something bad that he really didn't do. And that you had to kind of come to that on your own. Mm-hmm. And then figure out, someone said, no, tell the stories that are going on in the book. You had to come to that on your own. And so, you know, so thank you for writing him the way you did, because you made him very much a 3-dimensional person.
Oh, good.
You know,
it's my favorite thing to take a type that you've seen and then enrich them. I mean, Kelly is that white guy in that group of Black people who's always at the wedding, and you're like, who? And everyone's like, no, he's cool. Like, it's fine. Like, that exists, but then you have to make them a bit richer. And so Kelly is someone who I think is really polarizing to a lot of people. And I don't want to say too much about my personal life, but like, I've dated so much worse, and sometimes you're just like, it's fine. You know,
okay.
Like, you know, like I'm just young, I'm figuring it out. What's this guy going to end up teaching me? And Kelly also, you know, he has a type, as many people do. And I think that it's a hard thing for Emira to figure out where she fits into that type. Because he has a type, it doesn't mean that he won't end up with someone and love them and they will be wonderful and go from there. But it does mean for Emira, she has to say, what do you get out of dating Black women? Because I need to know. One of my favorite stories from this year, this woman who owns this Black-owned shop in Brooklyn, she's wonderful. She has really great head wraps, and she told my team that she read the book and she couldn't stop reading it. She's Black. her boyfriend's white, and she said she finished it at 2 a.m, and she slapped him and woke him up and said, "You need to tell me why we're dating. You need to tell me why we're getting out." Which I love.
See, that's what a book is for. A book is really for waking up your man and then 2 a.m. and saying, what's going on here? You know, that's the book. One of the things that I have to say that got me was I wanted Emira to really kind of tell Alix off a little bit more when the cameras were running. And I thought that you took it in a direction that it makes sense for Emira, but for me personally. So it was like, hey, you know, why didn't she say more? And so were you just being true to her character, or did you feel like, hey, the reader needed to come to their own conclusion on that?
A little bit of everything. There was so much going into her reaction. That's a great question. So on one end, Emira is a good communicator, but she takes a second. She needs a little bit more information before she can really deliver her thoughts, but she also is just so blasé and chill. I think sometimes she's like, whatever, it's fine. So in that moment, I really wanted to honor her, but I also just wanted to honor how many people work, myself included, in that something will happen, and then 2 hours later, I'm in the shower and I'm like, oh, I could have said this. I could have done this thing. I should have done this. And I think that that's very human. And so Emira is working in real time, and that was the best that she had. All of that said, a friend once told me something that I think about all the time when I was quitting my job. She said, when you quit your job, don't say this and then this and then this and then this. Have one good reason. Have one good thing that you can just deliver, and that's the thing that you hold on to. So I like that mentality, and I wanted to give it to Emira, and I wanted her to think, if I'm going to leave one thing with Alix, what is it going to be? She could have been like, and that time with the wine, and then with Kelly, and then with this, but I wanted her to just have one thing that will really hit Alix, and that Alix really can't forget it. And so she kind of focuses on her daughter and says this one thing that she really can't forget. And so this was a mixture of me wanting to honor that some of us come up with things 2 days later and you can't go back and say, and this, you know, I wish we could. But also Emira is calculated. She's smart, and she just wanted to have one final blow. Yeah.
You know, I have to go back to the scene quickly in the marketplace, and I wanted to thank you because the assumption of Alix and her husband was, and of Kelly too, was, of course, as a Black woman, you would want to put this all over the press. You would want to exploit it. You would want to get whatever. And I think that there's this piece of not understanding that Black people go through this stuff every single day, all the time. And it's emotionally exhausting. Yes. And there's no big desire for us to put it out there. So thank you for honoring that piece in such a magnificent and subtle way of writing that told the story from the other piece. And was that the way you wanted to go with that piece? Obviously, that's the way you wrote it, but
even just the way that you said it right now really hits home for me, that for so many Black people, it's, well, why would I make a big deal about this one when there's been this other one and this other one? And it becomes a job dealing with this video and dealing with people asking about it, and you have other things going on, and you know there's still life happening while someone is upset that you're Black, and you have to pay attention to those things too. I don't know if I would trust the internet with a video of me being really angry. I think that when Black women are angry in videos, it looks different than a lot of other people do in videos to a lot of people. And I think once the internet has it, it's not yours. People can make their own story with it. And I just don't know if I would want to see myself. It's kind of like when you hear yourself leaving a voicemail and you're like, oh no, that's what I'm like, that's a nightmare. And also, you know, what is justice in that moment? Emira says, you know, what's the point? So he can get fired and go get another job that probably underpays him. Like, who am I helping here with this? And often I think that there was drama this year with Amy Cooper. There was a really big question of, okay, are we really going to go to the same source to punish her that wouldn't save us? Like your murderer can't always be your messiah at the same time as well. So I think it's really complicated, and the internet makes things even more complicated. And I wanted Emira to make her own decision and show that for every Black person, it's not, okay, time to be a hashtag. That's just not what the experience is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, there was a question that was put in the chat, and I think this comes to the point of, I don't know if that was the intent of your book, but I'll ask the question, which is, what's the advice that you want to give to white allies when you're writing a story like this, when you're writing a book like this? So that was a question that I'm kind of curious to see how you want to respond to that.
Ooh, girl. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to be really real with you. I don't really know what an ally is or what it's supposed to be. I know what it is in terms of the LGBT in the 90s when the word came around, but as far as Black liberation is concerned, I can't point to any social movements that have been won or even been started by allies. I've never said, oh man, I really wish I had an ally right now. I've said things like, I wish I have health insurance right now. I wish I had the same housing opportunities right now. I think unfortunately, and it's no one person's fault, ally becomes a neoliberal, individualistic thing where someone says, what can I personally do to not feel guilty anymore? And it's kind of like saying, well, what charities can I donate to? And it's like, well, you have a computer. Why don't you figure out what you want to do as well? And so on one end, I completely understand the inclination, and I love that people have a heart to figure out what to do. And I also love that art can guide them how to get there. At the same time, I think first, Black women cannot be responsible for telling people what to do. They just can't. For me, if it's like something like what to do, Medicare for all. Emira should be able to go to the doctor. She should just be able to go to the doctor. And her money should not dictate how healthy she gets to be. That's what I feel. I feel like that's a big road to Black liberation. I have never said that about allies, but it's true. This is how I feel. And I hope that came with a lot of grace as well.
No, I think that was magnificent. It is a tough piece. And I think sometimes, to be perfectly honest, people want us, meaning Black people, Black women, want us to solve their problems. And that's not how this is going to work. So thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for voicing that. Thank you very, very much. I think that we're almost at a point where we've gotten to all the questions. And I know that some of you out there in the chat, we've missed some of the things, but I think we've gotten, people want to know what's coming next. What are you writing next? When can they expect to see more from you? And I think they're just enthused and excited about the work you're doing. So can you speak to that a little bit? Give us a little hint.
Yes. First of all, Helena, I do a lot of these, and you were such a wonderful moderator. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions and your moderating. You were really wonderful. And yes, I am still writing. Slowly. I'm working on a second novel, and I'm also an executive producer on the film adaptation of Such a Fun Age, which is taking its time because of the pandemic, but there will be something on screen one day, which is wonderful. And so as far as the next novel goes, I'm slow. So give me some time, but I will definitely have some more cringy scenes in the next one as well. So yeah, thank you so much. This was really lovely. Thank you.
And the last thing we're going to say is that you're slow. There's no way you fit that kind of definition at all. You are on top of your game, and we are so very, very pleased. So thank you very much for spending the evening with us and sharing your grace and your wisdom and your intelligence. And we look forward to whatever comes our way. We're anxious.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to both of you for a really wonderful conversation. Thanks to everybody who joined us for this event tonight and everybody who's participating in the chat. It's been really fun to watch those comments as well as listen to this conversation. A quick reminder that you can purchase the book at the link below. You can borrow it from the library. You can also make a donation into the KCLS Foundation to continue supporting these events. And again, thanks to both of you and thanks to everybody for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Emily. And I'm really sorry about my charger that has never happened. I really appreciate everyone being very cool about that. This was lovely. Next time, let's do it in person. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.